on, Bears fans? Another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast coming your way. Pat the designer, Space Ghost, coast to coast in the building.
Well done.
As
well done.
Shea Norling fading into the background. That's a deep pull. How many people do you think get that? I feel like that is a very our generation thing.
Yeah, you have to have grown up at a certain time and watched Adult Swim.
Yes.
Both things have to be true. If those things aren't true, you got no clue.
That was a very specific pull. I might have overshadowed on that one. But
listen, the important thing is the logo is coming through very clearly.
God.
Now, I didn't think about wearing green today being an issue, but here we go. So on Mondays, I can't wear this hat, but I'm sorry, man. Look,
are you feeling a little
we pasted
perked up?
Perked up. What am I,
perked up?
Aaron Rodgers, circa 2010? No.
You just killed Eric. I don't know if you heard that shriek in the background. That was the producer.
It probably says more about me than it does anybody else, but that was the first thing I thought of when you said perked up.
I'm not mad
which
at it.
I spend too much time on the internet. Yeah, dude, we put a loss on our rival in their building to take first place in the Big Ten. Yeah, of course I'm feeling a little good.
Yeah.
I had to represent today. I bought a new hoodie.
Yeah?
This is what I do. Not this hoodie, but what?
It's a nice hoodie too. I like
it's fine. I bought a Michigan State hoodie. When the teams are good, hey, here's a fucking word of advice. If you make your team good, people buy stuff.
Yeah.
Spend money, make money. And for the listeners, whoever you would like to apply that to, it's up to you. I'm not putting anybody's name out there. It's just that's smart business practice.
The Chicago Bulls or Chicago White Sox. No, man, listen, I think you guys have been on an absolute run. Meanwhile, I got to see Cooper Flagg over the weekend just absolutely hammer Illinois. I mean,
okay,
you want to talk about dropping the hammer. My God, it is falling. And I know Illinois fans don't want to do this. It was the first Michigan State loss that started the spiral.
I think it was the fact that you started playing real people with pulses. And look, the officiating stuff in the Michigan State game is what it is. The first one, the second one.
The second one was a
good
drama.
night.
Yeah.
But yeah, conference play for Illinois has been brutal, and they are Led Zeppelin right now.
Yeah, quickly. And it is ugly, and it is not getting better at any point. Seems like we may have some, we're benching players that are still kind of playing through. Seems like we may have some, I think, disciplinary issues going on up there. I don't like it. I don't like the direction we're going in.
It's not an Illinois pod, so I'm not going to deep dive the Chris Underwood thing, but there are clear problems there.
Yeah.
And I mean, Duke's side, they're the best team in the country to me. They're unbelievable.
Yeah.
And you watch them take a 40-point lead.
Yeah.
In Madison Square Garden.
It's just in a skull with an Illini hat on it and just the hammer.
I tell you what, nothing says classic college basketball like the Sentinel One Classic at Madison Square Garden between Duke and Illinois in late February. I mean, that is just, if that doesn't get the blood pumping, that's college basketball.
You know how many people tweeted me just like, I forgot the game was on.
The Sentinel One Classic. Like, what is Sentinel One? Oh, cybersecurity company. Of course.
The naming rights are wild.
It's so dumb.
The naming rights are wild with everything out here now. Let's talk a little bit of football, though, because this is the Chicago Bears podcast. And oddly enough, some good names being mentioned here to the Chicago Bears in the draft. I'm liking kind of where I'm seeing the mock drafts going. We will have to do our own mock draft here on the podcast. But before we start mocking your socks off, I do want to start with the fact that we've got the combine getting ready to go today. We'll be able to hear from Ryan Poles. We'll be able to hear from new Bears head coach Ben Johnson, I believe. We'll be talking as well. And I'm sure there will be a ton of questions on the direction that the Bears should go in this draft. Shea, I want to ask you this. You are a college representative, essentially, for the network. You're watching everything college all the time. Where are you feeling like the Bears are going to have the best opportunity if they stay at 10? What position group are you focused in on most at the combine here?
It's going to be tackle or defensive line. what it is. Will Campbell feels like, if you're paying attention to the mock drafts, and I know mock drafts aren't gospel,
Yes.
but if you're paying attention, it certainly feels more and more like Will Campbell is going to be a Patriot. He's going to be the 4th pick.
Yeah.
He'll be long gone by the time you're picking a 10. Probably not even really a trade-up candidate if you wanted to go and get him. It just, look, things can change between now and late April. Obviously, we've got 8 weeks until the draft, and we know a mercurial combine performance can change everything. Anthony Richardson can go from not a first-round grade to a number 2 pick in the draft. So it's just, we'll see what happens. But as we sit here today, everything I read this morning is Will Campbell's a Patriot.
Yeah.
So if you're the Bears, you're kind of just looking at, okay, what does defensive interior look like? AKA, is there a way Mason Graham slips? Likely no.
Yeah.
I have a hard time seeing, if I'm being earnest, like if I'm doing the prayer circle bit, I will get you Mason Graham. But if
Your prayer circles have yielded some results.
But if I'm being earnest, I have a hard time seeing how Mason Graham gets past Jacksonville.
Yeah.
There's been some talk that Jacksonville might take a corner, and Will Johnson, the Michigan corner, has been rumored as like being that guy. I think Daniel Jeremiah put something out. But if I'm the Bears and I'm sitting at 10, I'm kind of starting to hone in on Kelvin Banks Jr., the tackle from Texas. It just, that feels right now, like if I had to bet one player the Bears will get with the 10th pick, Kelvin Banks Jr. feels the likeliest.
Is he somebody who, because I think the conversation around Kelvin Banks Jr., even a Will Campbell, right, is, are you willing to take a guard at that position? It seems like these guys kind of end up sliding in with some of the measurables that they have. Will Campbell, I think, has the best chance to play tackle to me just because of how aggressive he is on that left side, the footwork that I think he has. Is Kelvin Banks Jr., if he does project to be a guard, a reach at that spot? Could you see the Bears maybe going with more of a surprise name at that spot of James Pierce has kind of fallen out of the excitement here. I think he's probably later in the draft, but I see Mike Green shooting up draft boards. I see, shockingly, and we talked about Gray Zabel and joked about it, like everyone's watching that Gray Zabel.
No, he's going to go high.
He seems like he's shooting up draft boards. Do you think the Bears maybe go a different direction than Kelvin Banks if he does project at guard?
You'd be hard-pressed to do it just because, like, it's Michael Williams, the kid from Georgia.
Yeah.
And James Pierce from Tennessee. Those are the 2 edge rushers. Neither of them profile as being like elite level players. You're not getting Abdul Carter. This isn't like a Jalen Carter slipping down.
Yeah.
Where Kelvin Banks, I think you know a little bit more, and he was a really highly touted kid going into the season. And frankly, the reason they're slipping, I'm surprised at the Will Campbell steam a little bit because of the short arm thing, and we'll see what happens when the measurements come out next weekend. But the Kelvin Banks slip thing, he could have been a top 5 pick if people felt like for sure he could be a left tackle. He's only slipping so far. Same thing for Will Campbell because people project him as a guard.
Yeah.
And look, man, if you believe that the player is the best player available, I don't give a shit if he's going to play tackle or guard.
Yeah.
I need the offensive line fixed. And I don't think that, like, I'm not going to go, oh, well, they took Kelvin Banks, but they should have taken so-and-so. Like, oh, you should have taken Genty there. No, if you come out of this offseason and it's Dowman at center and Trey Smith at right guard, and you go with Braxton at left tackle, and you put rookie, whoever that might be, if it's Kelvin Banks Jr., if it's a second-round guy like Tyler Booker out of Alabama, if that's your left guard, I don't think anybody's going to be upset.
Yeah.
Who would be upset?
I'm tingly on Tyler Booker right now. I'm not going to lie to you. I think that he may be somebody who shoots up draft boards. And the Bears have a ton of opportunity. Like you said, it starts with the free agency with all of this. That's going to be the biggest thing. What do the Bears do here in free agency in the long run? But to me, when I look at some of the draft picks here, it is last season, right, where I say, I'd like to see the Bears later on in the first round. Maybe you trade back and you go get Jackson Powers Johnson.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, Pat, you can't take a center in the first round. And now we got Coleman Shelton. You know what I mean? And this could have been a position that was addressed. Jackson Powers Johnson had a solid season last year, not a great season. Spent some time at guard, some time at center, but outside of one bad snap that gives the Kansas City Chiefs a win, he had a solid season. You feel like you got something there.
Sure.
That's kind of where, to me, the positional value is there, and I think you need to draft for what you have. Guard is maybe where it gets a little scary for me because I think you can replace. You can live with mid-level guards if you have elite center, elite tackle play.
Okay.
I don't know if Kelvin Banks is the game-changing tackle. I don't even know if Kelvin Banks is the best player on the board at that spot.
All right, so I'll throw an option at you because, I mean, if you're talking about other options, like Kelvin Banks to me is the likeliest, assuming Will Campbell does go to the Patriots. If you can't get Mason Graham, and we're taking trade out of this, and all likelihood Mason Graham's gone, top 5 picks. So if he's not there 10, and you're sitting there and it's Kelvin Banks Jr., but somebody's calling or you have an opportunity where you feel like you can trade back a little bit and pick up an extra pick and maybe get, because rather than reach for a guy, but Walter Nolan, defensive tackle from Ole Miss, transferred from Texas A&M, really good player. Also, Kenneth Grant played alongside Mason Graham at Michigan, disruptive interior defender, really good, gets pressure, big guy. Trading down and getting one of them also becomes entertaining if you want to get cute. I just think the idea that they're going to reach for somebody or get cute with the 10th pick is a little far-fetched.
Yeah.
What I think is really interesting, actually, the 10th pick, I think, is going to get dictated by what other teams do. One, what you do in free agency, which we haven't seen yet. And we can say, well, we think they're going to go offensive line. We have to see it.
Yeah. You also have to outbid everyone who also needs to go offensive line. The Patriots have the most cap space.
Yep.
You may be in a tough spot here.
So it's going to get dictated by that. And I just wonder if could they trade back into the first round? Like if you use one of those 2 second-round picks and you package a pick in the 70s or whatever you want to do, is there a world where you move back into round 1 and pick off like the 25th pick and get yourself another opportunity?
Yeah.
That's actually more interesting to me right now than the 10th pick. And I don't even know who that player would be, but I think there's opportunity to do something a little more creative like that. And maybe you feel like you have to jump somebody for Tyler Booker. So you move back into the first round. Or I'm trying to think of another player that's going to be late, but I'm just making the point.
Can I give you
I think the decision gets made for you for the most part at 10.
Yeah.
And your control is, okay, do we sit and wait out for the top 2 in the second round or try to make a move and jump into the late first?
Can I give you and listen, this is going to sound insane coming from me because y'all know how I am with this position group. But at 25 right now on PFF's big board, there's a player there that, dare I say, every time I watch him, I go, ooh, he might be Matt Forte. Omarion Hampton right now is slated 25 on that list, and we've heard that the Bears do want to go running back. I would not make this move. But could you see the Bears getting back into that first round in that range that you said for a player like that?
Well, there's some stuff. I saw a quote from 2023 from Ian Cunningham where he talked about, yes, it's worth it to take a running back in the first round.
Yeah.
So that immediately perks your ears up. Here's your problem. I think the likeliest landing spot for Omarion Hampton in the first round is the Vikings. And they aren't going to be racing to make a trade in the draft with a team in the
their division. Yeah.
So that makes it difficult. And frankly, dude, I think this running back class is deep enough that you don't need to force the issue on it. Like, I think based on what I've been looking at, Cam Scatterbo might be available for you potentially in the third round.
Yeah, he's fallen a little bit.
Dylan Sampson, kid out of Tennessee, really good back. You got Caleb Johnson, the kid out of Iowa. He's going to be available later. I haven't even gotten to Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins.
Yeah, they're both probably available second round for you.
Devin Neal out of Kansas is an explosive player. Damian Martinez out of Miami. Like, this is a loaded running back draft. So I think there's a world for me, and I've talked about this with you, where if everything is dictated in a way that like Ashton Genty is the only target left at 10, I can work my way to making that the pick. I'm not giving up draft capital to move back into the first round to get Omarion Hampton when I think there are comparable players available.
Yeah. It's going to be, I agree with you. The running back class to me, excuse me, is incredibly deep this year. And I think it's one of the deepest positions. I'll be honest with you. I haven't started breaking down all of the running backs. I've looked at Hampton, of course, Genty. Those are the top guys, right? Looked at Quinshon Judkins because of the Eddie George comments, to see kind of what the Bears are seeing on him. Who are the guys we aren't talking about? You know what I mean? Who's the Bucky Irving? Who's the Isaac Garendo? You know what I mean? Like who are the guys that we aren't talking about where you get into the fourth, you get into the fifth round, and that's where that guy is. I think you have to use those early picks, and especially if you're moving back into the draft on your trenches. And I think you talked about it, right? Like when you get into the 25s and kind of into that late first round, early second round range, if that were a situation for the Bears, and I talked about that this morning, that's an opportunity for you to get blue chip players on both sides of the line. If you go defense first round or with 10, you got a great chance to pick up a Gray Zabel, one of those tackles, one of those names. If you want to go, and here's the part I hate. If you got an end of the first round player, Shea, and you take him at the end of the first round, but maybe he grades as a middle of the second round player, that's still a starting level player that should be maybe not a superstar, but a star level player. I'm not sitting here upset if I'm getting a Tyler Booker who turns out to be my guard of the future at the end of the first round when, he was slated to go 15 picks after that.
Yeah. I think what's interesting too is we always react that way, right? Like, you could have got this guy later. We don't actually know that. We don't know what information
someone has to pick up the phone and be willing to trade with you.
Right. And you don't, like, you can look at it and go, well, PFF told me Tyler Booker was going to be available at 41. So why'd we trade up to 24 and get him? It's like, well, you don't know. Maybe the team at 25 was going to take Tyler Booker and we don't have access to that information. Or maybe the team at 25 is like, yeah, we're going to take Tyler Booker and they're bluffing you and they got you to bite and move up. Either way, we don't have access to everything that's going on that makes teams make these decisions. And I'm not even saying they're all right and defending all of them. It just, there's rationale that we don't get access to that goes into it. Who knows, man? Who knows how it's going to look? But I think, like, again, there are a lot of avenues the Bears can take, and there are very few that will actually make me, like, upset, like they did something stupid. And I think we haven't talked about Josh Simmons, tackle from Ohio State. He's a good player, could be a candidate, especially if you decide you can move down from 10. There are so many options for them. They could move up and go get Mason Graham.
Yeah.
They could move down and grab Kenneth Grant or Jonathan Simmons. What did I just call him? Josh Simmons.
Jonathan Simmons, you called him. Was it Jonathan? Is that a goalie? Jonathan Simmons feels like a goalie.
I'm exhausted. I just worked with Cap and Hood for 3 hours. You could go get an edge rusher. You get Nick Scourton, the kid from A&M. Like, there's so many options. And it's all going to be dictated by what free agency looks like. The running back thing, last year, my two favorite backs in the draft were Jonathan Brooks, the kid from Texas, who, like, died. His leg exploded. Didn't get an opportunity with Carolina this year. And Bucky Irving. And it wasn't highly touted first-round talents. It was more, I want to bargain bin hunt this.
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat again this year. I think Caleb Johnson's an interesting opportunity if you can get him in the third round. I love Devin Neal out of Kansas. Guy a lot of people haven't watched. Kansas had a really bad year this year, but I like him a lot as a player. I would take a shot on Devin Neal. He's explosive, a little smaller, a little more agile as a back, kind of the foil to Roschon Johnson, less of a power dude.
All right.
That interests me. So there's so many ways that they can go, and there's so many players that I'm into, and I haven't started doing all the scouting and the film and watching all these guys, but watching them throughout the year, which I think is way more valuable anyway than, like, I don't care about the combine. Like, the funniest thing in the world to me is you'll have a guy show out in gym shorts and they'll be like, did you see his broad jump? and then all of a sudden he's a top 15 talent. And I'm like, I watched him play football. I watched him play actual football, and he wasn't good. Anthony Richardson's the perfect example. And I think, look, if you're the Bears, here's the thing people need and should really want. And I doubt it's going to happen to the extent that you need it. But if Jalen Milroe goes and has this freak show combine where he puts out insane measurables, is an Anthony Richardson rise in the cards?
I think there's always in the cards because everyone. Listen, there are teams that are at the top of this draft that need quarterback that aren't taking it because they don't believe in the quarterback class.
Well, yeah, and I think
there's a ton of them.
Like if Tennessee chooses Abdul Carter, okay, it probably doesn't help you a ton because it's Cam Ward that ends up going to Cleveland in all likelihood. But what if it's Abdul Carter 1 and Travis Hunter 2? And then it's, whoa, Cleveland gets an opportunity at Cam Ward. Shedeur continues to slip, and Shedeur Sanders goes 5 or 6 if Jacksonville decides to make a trade. What happens if Cam Ward's not there or Shedeur's not there for Vegas, and Vegas goes, well, we need a quarterback, and Milroe had a freak show combine. Let's go Milroe. And what happens if Jackson Dart makes a push out of Ole Miss?
That's the one that I think a lot of people are seeing possibly make the push, Jackson Dart, which is kind of interesting.
But again,
I watched football all year,
and he's not bad, but he just, to me, I see him as a college quarterback. Nothing jumps off the tape as like, oh my God,
your hope for Jackson Dart, I feel, is that if you're drafting him, is he the conversation that Jalen Hurts was coming out of college? Jalen Hurts was kind of that, like, he feels like more of a college quarterback, but if you put him in the right system, he'll be fine. And I think he's accentuated that at every turn.
Yeah, but even that has Jalen Hurts accomplished so much more in college.
Yes.
Jackson Dart accomplished nothing in terms of winning, nothing. He was never a Heisman finalist. His teams never lived up to the hype that they would get, especially not this year. Best team in Ole Miss history, and they lost 3 games. They missed the college football playoff. Like it was an unacceptable season at Ole Miss. No, I don't feel. I feel differently about Dart in that, like, it's all sizzle, no steak. And at least with Jalen Hurts, there was steak.
There was steak.
Might have been a little overcooked. I might not have been super happy with it.
It might have been a little well-done steak.
But there was steak. I was being served something. Yeah. I watched Jackson Dart, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just watching a pan fizzle.
You got just the fajita pan, no meat on it.
I keep being told. I mean, it's the same thing, and this isn't for this year's draft, but it's the same thing with Penn State. Everybody keeps telling me how good Drew Aller is, and it's about, like, quarterback in general, I think, has become this position that gets a little overvalued, and we talk too much about it. And you get to the draft, and you're like, well, this team doesn't have a quarterback. They need one. They have no option but to take one. So Will Levis suddenly is a first-round talent. Oh, we're going to, last year you took, and last year's unique because they were all good, but you take 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, what are we doing here?
We were all shocked by that.
How did J.J. McCarthy become the 12th pick in the draft? How did Michael Penix become the 9th pick in the draft or the 8th pick in the draft, right? Like, quarterback is so highly valued now. And I don't know. I keep hearing about Drew Aller as this next year. He can't miss him. He could be a number 1 pick in the draft out of Penn State. And then I watch him and I'm like, he sucks. What do you mean? Like, at some point, watching football has to matter. I watched Anthony Richardson at Florida. He was awful.
He was horrible.
He couldn't complete passes. He was wildly inaccurate. He had an electric deep ball and he could run. He's an athlete, but he can't do actual quarterback things. And then he gets to the NFL because he has this freak show combine. And you're like, okay, well, everybody's telling me how great this is and buying into the hype. And I still see still see stats people that are like, you just don't get it. You don't get it. What do I not get at this point?
Let's not even say he had a freak show combine. He hit the roof. That's what got him drafted that high. He didn't even have a great combine.
No, he did.
Athletically, a lot of the running and things like that. But passing-wise, he still was 60%, which is the line.
We can't revisionist history because I get it. Like, the accuracy stuff was always an issue. He had one of the all-time great combine performances, which goes to show how fucking useless the NFL combine is in terms of, can I find a player here?
Bro, I said this.
Anthony Richardson had one of the all-time great combine performances. Think about that.
The draft, I said this morning, the draft combine is the bum booster, right? It's the BBL of football, right? The guys who are the top guys usually still are the top guys at the end of it. Jalen Carter had a horrible draft combine. People were losing their minds. He looks out of shape. He looks tired. How's he out of breath already? This shouldn't be happening here. And then he's a game wrecker and he's a monster in the Super Bowl, and the combine doesn't matter because the combine doesn't matter. Meanwhile, all of the bums kind of just force their way into that first round, late in the first round. Oh, he's a top guy. Did you see what he did in the combines? Look at the measurables on this guy. And I think it's different based on the team, right? I think Xavier Worthy boosted his draft stock, which he was a good receiver in college, but he boosted his draft stock because he fit what the Chiefs needed.
Well, and he set the speed record.
He set the speed record, but I mean, like he literally fit what the Chiefs were looking for as a receiver. So they're like, well, okay, we got everything else, or we feel we have everything else. They needed some tackles. We feel we have everything else. Let's go get the receiver. That makes sense for that team. If the Bears were to do that, or the Panthers were to do that, or whoever it is, now you're looking at this guy's, oh, this guy sucks.
Right.
He doesn't make sense for this team. So, like, I think all of that plays into it. The combine to me is just, hey, we're going to make this thing that was okay look a lot better by just adding some numbers to it.
So here's another thing that's going to be interesting, and I'm glad you brought up Worthy because it's leading me to another place. We know Ben Johnson wants speed in the offense, right? That's part of where I look at Devin Neal as like a quicker guy. A Caleb Johnson at Iowa, who I think is great.
Caleb Johnson's a dog.
Could fit in a Ben Johnson offense. But what about receiver? Like, is there a guy at the combine? And I'm not saying first round, but maybe if we wanted to go back to that idea of could you trade back into the first round? And I don't think any of these guys are really going to be candidates. But if Isaiah Bond shows that he's got like crazy speed at the combine, receiver out of Texas, if you don't know, used to play at Bama, transferred, could he be an option early second round for the Bears? I wonder if you want to replace Keenan Allen and you want to go that route to do it, do you find a guy who has just game-breaking speed? That's his skill set, and give him to Ben Johnson and go, here you go. That's the speed you wanted on the outside. Figure out how to use it.
See, the only thing I would question about that is, right, if you find a guy who's solid in college, but who adds the speed, and the speed is what's enamoring you, wouldn't you just try to have Antoine Randall, who you just brought in, develop some of these guys that you currently have on the roster? Tyler Scott, his only endearing quality right now as a receiver is speed. It's the only, he's a 4.3 40, right? He's a 4.3 40 guy, I think. I think like that's the only endearing quality he has at wide receiver. You took him in the 4th round, I believe.
Yeah.
Like you've got guys on the roster where speed is their only. Was he a 3rd?
Maybe.
No, he was a 4th because our thirds, none of our thirds are good, and it's Valus.
I mean, is Tyler Scott going to be on this team?
Tyler Scott might be on this team, dog. Tyler Scott might be a slot receiver, dog.
But no, I can't live in a world where that's true, especially not with the picks that they have. I would have to get another one. Because here's the thing. Are you better off if Antoine Randall just develops X player and turns him into a stud? Sure. It also means you got to pay that guy sooner. Tyler Scott's got 2 years under his belt.
Yeah.
If you turn Tyler Scott into a top flight wide receiver, well, that's a great feather in the cap of Antoine Randall. And hey, Ben Johnson's just football Jesus. Like, we're in a great place. This guy who stinks and can't get on the field actually now is a really good talent. But he's a 4th round pick that we don't have an option year on.
Yeah.
And now we have to pay him like a good receiver. That's how you get Christian Kirk.
Do you though? Because I think here's the thing.
Fuck yeah.
Well,
dude.
Well, no. Because here's my point. If I know Randall can do that, now I'm in the 2nd round of whatever draft is 2 years from now, and I'm saying I'm gonna take a guy who is one of these top guys. Tyler Scott, you have a nice life. Hope you get paid somewhere. Get your money right. And we're gonna go out here and because you're still paying Roma Dunze on a rookie deal. You're paying DJ Moore decent money already. I go out and I find another guy for you to develop into a Tyler Scott. We know where he's starting at here. I'm not telling you he turns into the next elite speed guy out of the back or off of the bench here. But
this whole conversation is based on the hypothetical that Tyler Scott becomes good, which is a wildly unrealistic thing.
Yeah.
When you're in the NFL and you haven't been good for 2 years, the idea that year 3 you're just gonna snap and break out and be awesome because a new coach got their hands on you, it almost never happens. the likelihood that Tyler Scott just is a guy who had a cup of coffee in the league and then is off to do insurance sales is massively more likely, which is where I'm like, okay, I'm not even saying I do it. I'm just floating the opportunity.
Yeah.
Second round, and there's a speedy wide receiver on the board. Do you hand him Ben Johnson? Because my fear again, even if you're right, I think it's wildly unlikely that you would develop Tyler Scott into a legitimate player and then just go, well, our coach did this, so get out. Antoine Randall wants to be a coordinator one day too, probably.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee he's staying in Tyler.
Well, that's the only next step for him. You made him the assistant head coach here.
But that's my point is if you have Antoine Randall and you're like, well, we have Antoine Randall, so we're just going to find a new wide receiver. Are you sure if Antoine Randall develops Tyler Scott that he's staying?
But see,
that's where you pay the known quantity, and that's how you get Christian Kirk.
Here's the thing, though, Shea. We live in this world of, but if this guy develops, now he's gone, and we have to. We haven't had that happen yet. Let me see it happen first.
Well, exactly, and that's again.
We can't remember. Well, if Shane Waldron develops Caleb Williams, he'll be a head coach next season. Yeah, all right.
And this is the nonsense of all of this is if.
Yeah.
But that's also the whole draft conversation.
100%.
Like, well, I can tell you 8 prospects I love, and obviously Mason Graham is my favorite player in the draft that I believe it's realistic the Bears can get by hook or by crook. In all likelihood, they have to trade up to get him. Number 1 player in the draft for me. That's the guy. But things have to work in a way where you actually can get him.
Yeah.
And that I have no control over, prayer circle or otherwise. So then it's like,
I need some voodoo, dog.
Right. That's where I can tell you guys I love, I can tell you guys I hate, but frankly, there aren't a lot of guys that I hate.
Yeah. That
I think the Bears have a realistic shot at drafting, unless they go out of their mind. Like Malachi Starks, I go, what the fuck are you doing?
There it is. There's the one. I was like, you hate somebody in this draft.
That's not even a case of I hate Malachi Starks.
Yeah.
It's you don't need a safety.
Yeah.
Don't draft a safety.
That'll be the one. I want to talk about a couple of players who have fallen out of favor in a lot of these mock drafts before we get out of here. But first, we do got to tell you guys all about Mitch Lyons. I'm excited to let you guys know about a new partner of ours in Mitch Lyons Wealth. Mitch Lyons is a former NFL player. He's played with Yurko on the football field, and he's an expert in protecting your nest egg and optimizing your income. All you got to do today is go to MitchLyonsWealth.com. That's Mitch, Lyons Wealth.com, MitchLyonsWealth.com. Your best game plan to protect, grow, and win retirement. Big shout out to Mitch Lyons out there. Still got to get him on the pod with Yerk. That'll be just hilarious conversation. I want to ask you about a couple of names who was the number 1 pick leaving his freshman year. Coming into his sophomore year, seems like that, or sophomore year, going to his junior year, I should say, seems like that has cooled off wildly. It's James Pierce Jr. When I watch his tape, the one question that I have on him is he going 100% every single play. But you also see him getting chipped a lot more this year. You also see him dealing with double teams a lot more this year. People paid attention to him, and it affected his game. And I'm not saying that shouldn't drop you in the draft, right? He shouldn't be the number 1 overall pick because those same things happen to Abdul Carter. Those same things happen to somebody who I'm high on in Mike Green, who I think he might be the second best pass rusher in this draft. He resets the line of scrimmage every single time. Even in that Ohio State game, he did that. But James Pierce Jr. was somebody who everybody had all these high expectations on. And in a season that he didn't live up to him, he still came away with an 8-sack season, and he was always around the football. He was always around the quarterback, just didn't always get the quarterback this year. Are the drop-offs on him too aggressive this year, or are you out on him as well?
Does it have to be black and white? I don't really, I don't know. I think he could be good. I think it's funny the way people have talked about him, where it's, oh, he only got 7.5 sacks. Like he's some bum.
That's a lot.
And I'm like, he got double digit.
Was it 14 the year before, right? 14 the first year, and then
10, I think. But it was double digit TFLs both seasons. And people are like, well, he didn't get enough sacks. I'm like, 7.5's a fine. Now, it's not great for a college kid who's at times going against, like Kent State.
Yeah.
But you got to be on the field to get some of that production. And there were games early in the season, Tennessee was up by 1 billion points and pulling their guys out. So I have to watch the tape, see where a lot of the production came from. It's not a player that I'm like, oh no, he's clear, can't miss. It's also not a player that I'm sitting here like, yeah, the drop off is right and he shouldn't be thought of as top tier talent. I just don't really know.
Yeah.
James Pierce could be awesome. He could be terrible.
That's what a lot of, and I think that's what concerns me about this. That's what Mel Kiper said. He basically said, I don't know what this player is. I don't know what he projects to be. And so because of that, he's out of the first round for me. Or he's at the bottom of the first round. I think he came in at 20th in the latest mocks.
He's going to be a first round pick, I think. Yeah. And he's another candidate that if you go out and you have crazy athletic performance at the combine, you're going to make yourself a top 10 pick. Have a good time. Like, he had the productive year with Tennessee the year before. And frankly, Tennessee was a weird team to follow all season. Offensively, it felt like they were a light show to start the season. And then as the season wore on, they had a harder time staying on the football field. You get a more tired defense that way. So there's a lot that plays into this stuff. I always think it's silly. Like, oh, James Pierce didn't get enough sacks, so we got to write him off completely. Yeah. Well, no, you should make it about pressures, not just about sacks. You're not always going to finish a pressure with a sack. So, I got to go watch the tape, and I'll let you know. But, no, as it stands, and just from memory of having watched the season, I didn't see enough to be like, he can't be a first-round pick.
Yeah.
No way.
He seems like he still has the top-tier production to me. I do think the one thing that I continue to see, I think he's one of those players who has like the things you don't teach, right? Like he knows how to get around a guy on the edge where the right tackle's trying to get the arm up. I'm going to grab the wrist and get around him. I'm going to hold him. He's got a lot of those intangibles. The thing that I do think he struggles with at times is he going 100% on every play? Because there are the misses, there are pressures where it's like you should be able to grab the quarterback. That's basically Jaden Daniels. That is, Lamar Jackson. That is that guy. But then I also have the thought where it's like, yeah, well, I've watched Myles Garrett miss that guy a lot too.
Yeah,
like that's the part where it's tough for me when you evaluate these guys.
I always laugh too. Like you get the character concern thing. You're talking about the effort thing. Can he play football? Guy got 17 and a half sacks in 2 seasons.
See, here's the thing, though. Chase Young's a good football player. Numbers-wise. When I need Chase Young to be a good football player in impact moments, that's where the question comes in.
But that also might not be fair because Chase Young was the generational once-in-a-lifetime prospect in college.
That is true.
There were no questions about his effort. There were no questions about his production, certainly. He could have been a Heisman candidate.
Yeah.
So I struggle there because he just hasn't lived up to that hype. And it feels like
he's had injury play into that as well.
Dude, it's like the Jalen Carter thing. And I even fell victim to it. He only plays half the snaps in Georgia, right? Like, does he have the physical athletic ability, the stamina to go out and be an NFL D tackle? And then this year he played 1,300 snaps.
Yeah.
So egg on my face.
Season, by the way, only playing half the snaps.
Dude, Jalen, honest to God,
out 1,300 snaps, and we were 5 weeks in. Like he's not out there on third down.
I wish I'd finished this or reached this point quicker, but Jalen Carter's going to be a pivot point in my life at looking at like college athletes and just going, is this guy good or is he not good?
Yeah,
I don't care about anything else. I don't care about questions about effort. I don't care about snap counts. I don't care about character issues because God knows there's no morality in this league anyway. So why should I bother? None of this stuff do I care about except can you play football? Period.
Yeah.
I don't care about your broad jump. I don't care about your 40 time. I don't care about your cone drill. If you're a quarterback, I don't care about any of it. Can you play ball?
Yeah. The breakdowns of like, well, his shoulder wasn't low enough in the cone drill on them. I was like, okay,
right. I need hoopers.
That's good. that's all I'm looking for. Looking for elite players. And to your point on that, let's finish it out with this one because you brought his name up earlier. And I think this is a player that probably is the most intriguing because he feels like the only actual tackle who was going to be one of those top guys who fits all the measurables, fits the look. Josh Simmons out of Ohio State at left tackle at a position that the Bears need, but coming off of the injury, me included, but just about every Bears fan is going, please, God, do not draft somebody who is coming off of injury. Where are you at on Josh Simmons? Is he falling just because of the injury? Is he somebody who's going to be a gem in this league? Because to me, he played 5 games where his numbers look the best. And we know Ohio State is not exactly scheduling Alabama the first 5 games of the year. I guess I can't say Alabama anymore. Georgia, the first 5 games of the year.
Yeah. Ohio State's schedule early in the season was a complete joke.
Yeah.
So it's hard to take much away from it. But you can still say a player's a good player. And Josh Simmons has the pedigree. He is a good player. The injury thing hurts him. It's a little bit like the Jackson Smith and Jigba deal, right?
Yeah.
Where it's same school even. Jackson Smith and Jigba could have been the first wide receiver off the board. Didn't play at all his senior year. Goes into the draft and falls to the late first round. I think he was in the 20s, right?
Yeah.
To Seattle.
Yeah.
Josh Simmons projecting middle of the first round, 16, 17, 18 in that range. True tackle. There's fewer size concerns. I think my issue is if I'm the Bears, I'm looking for a player I can slot in. I need a plug-and-play guy. I'm a little hesitant to take a guy who hasn't played football for the better part of a year at that point and put him into a plug-and-play type of situation. Because I think if you take a Josh Simmons, your plan probably is to kick Braxton inside and play Josh Simmons at tackle. And I don't know if I can give that level of responsibility to a guy who's been injured. Not that he's an Ivy Leaguer project, Kieran Amagaje type, but just more that like it might not be the best time for this team because he might be more of like a rotation sub in. I don't know that he's going to be a first-year starter at tackle in the NFL. I don't know that he's because of the injury. I don't think this is a Joe Alt situation,
right? Where he can just walk
him in at left tackle and you're good to go.
That's interesting because I would think that is the perfect scenario if you have Braxton Jones to have a guy like that. If you think he's going to be a long-term answer, the optics aren't going to look great. If you're the Bears, right? If you draft a guy 10 and he's not every single snap out there. Well, but that is where a Braxton Jones to me is the most beneficial on this team because you've got a starting caliber left tackle already in place, and your hope is that Josh Simmons comes in and basically takes that job, very similar to what Braxton did.
Yeah, but I think the idea would be that you could move Braxton inside, right? And this is where I struggle with it because if it's like, okay, in theory, having Braxton in front of him and the ability to kind of do what the Packers did with Jordan Morgan, who wasn't an immediate left tackle starting guy, but this offensive line has holes. And I think fans, myself, not that I'd be pissed. If you take Josh Simmons, you take Josh Simmons. But if you like get center and right guard, we assume in free agency and we live in that world and you don't have a left guard and you spend your 10th pick on a tackle while you have a tackle in place and you drafted a 3rd round tackle last year and they're all on the left side of the offensive line, one of these guys doesn't fit here. And you got to figure out who it is quickly because you've got to fill left guard.
Yes.
So I would be more inclined to use the 10th pick on somebody else, even if it's a Kelvin Banks and I got to kick him in, or if it's not Genty. I would do Josh Simmons over Genty, but if it's a defensive lineman, certainly.
Yeah.
And I'd go the Tyler Booker route in the 2nd round if I could.
100%.
And again, I got to go do the homework a little more, and I'm going to start doing that pretty soon. But it's the Josh Simmons thing coming off the injury. I worry about slotting him in plug and play.
It's a concern. It's a major concern because listen, you also have shot yourself in the foot multiple times with that guy. How many times have the Bears under Ryan Poles drafted a guy who coming out of college, he's a little bit banged up, but they expect him to be going by training camp here, and then training camp gets here, and we're like, yeah, he's still banged up. He's dead. Can we get him on the field? Now we're in the middle of the season, and he looks horrible. And the only conversation is, well, he didn't have an off season here. Like, we're 8 weeks in. Can we get this guy on the field consistently? So I think you've shot yourself in the foot with that too many times to where if Josh Simmons is in training camp and has injury concerns, is in the season and has injury concerns, you're kind of putting yourself in that same spot. I do have a rule of thumb. Don't draft dudes with injuries. If he's hurt before he gets there, don't draft.
But it's not like he tore a patellar tendon.
Yeah.
It's not a small thing. He had season-ending surgery. So I don't know. I'd be a little nervous. And long term, I think it could be great.
Yeah.
But I think the seat's too hot for the GM to be thinking about long-term moves.
You got to have some hits. You got to have some hits. You got to have a lot of hits in this draft. And you got a lot of opportunities to do it. We'll see what happens. Let us know in the comments below who you guys are paying attention to at the Combine this week. Going to be a fun week. Going to have Courtney Cronin on the show from the Combine. That'll be fun. Get to hear from her and get to see some of the things that she saw down there. J-Mac as always, man. So appreciate y'all for tuning in, showing love. Stay safe out there, Chicago. Bear down, one love. For Shea Norling, it's your boy Pat the Designer, man. Peace. Well, it faded away, so.